Welcome everybody to this edition of the Publicity monthly client call. Whoop. Hey, David, I'm gonna actually turn off your video.
No, leave it on. It's
you
fine.
Want to leave it on?
Yeah, leave it on.
All right, we can. I think it's better for the initial part. Let's, David, if you could turn off your video, or I'll do it.
There you go.
Just for the beginning. All right, I'm gonna start again.
Okay.
Hey everybody, welcome to this March edition of our Publicity private client coaching call. And we've got a couple of really great things to talk about here for the next 15 or 20 minutes. Some things Tracy and I want to share with you that we think will be of particular interest to all of our clients. And then we'll open it up to questions from anybody live participating today. And if you're unable to obviously watch this live, you're watching the recording. Sorry you won't be able to answer or ask any questions, but that's always a reason to tune in live if you can next time. And actually, we got another person joining here. That's just going to happen over a little bit. Welcome, Catherine. We're just starting the program, and we'll open up for questions in a little while. Anyway, today, what we want to share with you are some publicity opportunities. And is it just opportunities, Tracy, or what else? How would you frame it?
No, we're going to talk about advanced publicity techniques in general. So, we're really wanting to get at like how you can promote your show both at the launch and then ongoing. So I'm going to give you some things. So I've had a few private calls with clients and realized that this is just an ongoing thing. So thought we'd do a bigger group conversation about that.
You know what? I also want to remind everybody who's watching this live right now, go up to the upper right and click on gallery view so you can see both Tracy and I at the same time. If you're not in gallery view, because Tracy and I are using the same sound system, her camera you won't be able to see her unless you click gallery view. So go ahead and do that. Sorry, quick reminder. Those of you watching the recording, it's not an issue for you. So I'm sorry, Tracy.
That's okay.
Continue. I just want to make sure everybody can see you when you talk.
Right. So we're going to talk a little bit about different types of publicity options, things that you might not have thought about. I'm going to call them like, what would be the grassroots techniques. Some of them are even out of the box thinking about publicity and ways to get that, and ways to utilize what you're already doing and get more for that. So we want to, just kind of go over all of those things. So there's a couple of things that I just want to start with, and that is that there are publicity options through us, right? We try to provide options for you whenever we can. So if you haven't read the email, and we think a lot of you have because we see a high open rate on that, but if you haven't read the email, we have launched the guest directory. And so that also is a host directory. So it allows you to be found, to be invited to be a guest on other people's shows as well. And it gives you an opportunity to go find other hosts that you would like to guest on. Because one of the best ways to get more traction, and I have been interviewing many, many top podcasters as a part of what I'll talk about in a minute. And as I interview them, the number one way that they say they see spikes in traffic is by going on other podcasts. So that's one of the best ways for you to increase your listenership. So use our guest directory. It's absolutely free. All you have to do is send an email and say, I want in. Our team will build a profile for you. If you want to opt out of the host side, in other words, you don't take guests on your show, I'm just going to tell you that could hurt you. Because usually when you're asking to guest on someone else's show, they expect a quid pro quo kind of arrangement so that you'll eventually invite them on your show. So if you're relevant to their audience, then they should be relevant to yours. And keep in mind, it's not going to hurt your listenership. If you've got great content, and you're a real estate show and you go on another real estate show that's different than yours. So, I know I know David's our new real estate guy on here, but if you went on Scott Carson's show, and Scott Carson's a note closers, very, very different from the type of real estate that you're talking about. Real estate investors, people who are interested in real estate in general, they're willing to listen to different types of shows. And they're always looking for more. The average number of shows that people listen to is 7.
And on a regular basis.
On a regular
weekly.
basis.
Yeah.
And they like to listen to many in the genre. So this is not a way for you to lose listeners. If you're great, they're coming back to you. So it's not going to change. But you can also get some new listeners who haven't heard of you, but are interested in the genre. So relevance matters the most here in going on a show that has a relevant audience, an audience that will be attracted to you. Now, sometimes that might be demographics. You're looking for millennials and you found a show that attracts millennials. Like we have a podcast that I'm interviewing. I think I interview them next week, and they are a wedding podcast. They're all about weddings. Like, David, your new homes would be ideal. Now, not all of them are going to be in the OC area or the LA area or all of that, but hey, you're bound to get some people. So that in and of itself is a great tie-in from a demographic standpoint and the right time of life and all of that. So we look at that as being relevant. It could also just be genre, like I referred to before, where real estate shows are all different, or investing shows, things like that. So just be thinking about that as you're reaching out them. And what I wouldn't worry about is the size of the audience. Remember that any amount of listeners coming over drags more listeners with them.
Well, not only that, I want to add to that, Tracy, is that even if the podcast that you might be a guest on is a brand new show, actually being an early guest on a brand new show, people sometimes think, well, you don't have much of an audience yet. Is that really worth it? I would actually argue that it is absolutely worth it, because you'll be on one of the first shows, even if it's not for 6 months or 8 months, before somebody finds that show and then listens to their latest episode. Most often they'll go back to the beginning and start listening to the early episodes. So if you're on one of those, a guest on one of those early episodes, you're probably going to be listened to just as much as if you were on a recent episode a year after the show started. So don't worry about that.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. The second thing that is going to come with this ability to be in our guest directory, so as both being a guest, is that we also, I'm bringing in many PR firms into the group that will be bringing new guest options for you. And remember, when you get a guest who has a PR firm about that backing them, then there will be higher circulation and publicity happening on your episode. So that's how we're attracting new guests in. We're not just randomly putting out an ad and saying, hey, join our guest directory. We're not advertising at all. It is only by relationship that people can join our directory. Everyone is getting vetted before a profile goes up. So that is really critically important for you. So you will never get a guest outreach that didn't go through and we didn't say they came from someone we know. They either already have a profile on it, so they've been vetted before that. They have a website and they have social following. They are who they say they are. So this will not be spam options for you. So you can take a look at that and say, you know, you can reach out and say, is there a PR firm associated with this? And our team will answer, yes, this person came in from one of our PR agents. And that's a great reason to say yes and invite them on your show, because now there will be push out in the other direction. You can have somebody else do that publicity work for you.
So Tracy, I just want to remind, because we've had a couple people join since you started talking, we're talking about publicity opportunities, especially free publicity opportunities for your show. And Tracy right now is talking about our new guest directory and podcast host directory on, actually it's our new guest directory and host directory are actually on featurebrand.co, which is the companion website to Poditize. It's where our podcast Feed Your Brand is located.
Right. So if you're not listening to Feed Your Brand, our podcast, it's additional support for you. So this is an option if you're new to our company and you're new to being one of our clients here. The Feed Your Brand podcast is your support. Now, we do one-on-one episodes. You can skip some of those, but I am doing a whole new series called Center of Influence, and that's the next one that I want to offer up to you as an option. So I'm doing a series called Center of Influence. I'm doing some interviews, only if they're really top podcasters. So I just interviewed someone who has 935 episodes. And he's been podcasting since 2016, I think he said.
Only 2 years?
Only 2 years, okay. And he's got that many episodes. Wow. 2015, that's not 15? Right. 15, yeah. So that's a lot of episodes in that amount of time. So, and so he had some great advice for how to increase listeners, how to get great guests. I'm asking them a series of questions. Now, I'm doing it two ways. One is that many, many people can come in and it's being pushed out to all podcasters in, not on our network, anywhere out there. It's being pushed out by Authority Magazine to them and inviting them in. There's a question and answer form. And you answer the questions yourself, you pull all that in, it gets published in Authority Magazine and on Thrive Global. And there's a section there where it asks these 5 quick questions, like what are the best ways to engage an audience? What are the best ways to get great guests, right? And it asks 5 of them. Those 5 are going to turn into roll-up articles that are going to be published by BuzzFeed. So you've got 3 publications that would give you backlinks essentially. And so that's really valuable publicity. So that will be offered to you as well as clients. However, I cannot do the live interview with you. That's the third part. The center of influence, I can't do that and write the article. I can only do the question and answer. So you guys are going to have to do the Q&A and then do an interview with me. So you have to do both things separate, where many of those podcasters are just going to do an interview with me and an article will be written. I can't do that. It's a conflict of interest.
Yeah, explain why that is.
Yeah.
That's Authority Magazine that asked Tracy to write this new column. It's a requirement or restriction of theirs.
Right. It's a restriction of theirs that I can't write the article kind. But if you're filling out the Q&A, that can publish because that has nothing to do with me. So you can still have that published and you still have the possibility for BuzzFeed. So either way, you're getting that. But we still also have the feature article that you can have written about you here. That can still happen. So that's on feedyourbrand.co. That will still be available there. So there's multiple ways to get articles written about you, which helps to get some backlink information. Now, remember, this is just about podcasters, so it's not really necessarily circulating out to your core audience, right?
Yeah,
it's podcast.
Depending on what your business is or your business goals are. But I would think any exposure
it's good for you.
My podcast is going to be good for whatever my personal goal is for my show, whether that's a personal goal or a business goal.
Right. Absolutely. So again, if you missed that email, the email basically said, opt in and say, yes, I want in on the guest directory. We'll create the profile for you. We'll send it to you. You approve it and then it goes up, and then you'll have that option where people will invite you on and where people will also, apply to be on your show essentially. Either way, everything goes vetted through our team. So you're never going to get an email that didn't get screened by somebody.
Now, so let's remind everybody. So everyone who is able to attend this live webinar should have gotten an email inviting you to say, yes, I want to participate in the host directory or the guest directory. If somehow you missed that and you still want to be included, what email address should they send that to? To you? All right. So send an email to alexandra@podetize.com if you think you might have been missed, or you just want to make sure you're included in that guest and host directory. You just have to say, please include me, and we're going to go ahead and do it. You don't have to do any work.
Right.
So that's been happening for a couple of weeks, and it's continuing to happen. All of our people we're working with, all of our clients are getting added to the list if they want to be automatically. And then we've also opened it up to actually anybody on earth really who's a podcaster or wants to be a guest on podcasts to apply to also be in the directory, but we'll get to them after all of you.
Yeah, and then as I said, we have relationships that we've been building over many years with PR firms and individual publicists, independent publicists, and so those publicists are being offered to put all of their clients in as well. We even have one speaker agency that is going to come in as well. So there's some great options here. If you're running out of guest ideas, please, every day new people are being added. So come check it out regularly. It's feedyourbrand.co, and you just select the guest and host directory tab.
Yeah, it's in the top menu, and check it out, because these profiles, it's not just a little something in writing. I mean, we've really made this, we worked on it for a long time before we launched it. We've made this, we made each of you look really good in this directory. I mean, there's graphics to it. There's, obviously there's all the information, written information about you, but there's also going to be a couple examples of some of your podcast episodes that people can listen to. there's a lot to it. So
Right.
check it
There's
out.
an opportunity for you to, in the future, even if you don't have one right now, add a one sheet. If you don't know what that is, we can talk about that on another show. Or, we can discuss that in person if you need that. But a one sheet basically on you or on your show. You might want to have both, or you might want to have a combination of both.
Right.
So there's an opportunity to put that in. There's samples of video, samples of audio, so people can see you on stage if you want, whatever that is, because you don't know who's going to be looking at that. So PR firms are going to be applying through here, and they're going to be bringing their clients in. These are great. Building relationships with PR firms is great. So once you've had one of their guests on, this is what starts to happen. They ask you, can I pitch some more? And you'll find that you start building relationships over time, and you'll find that it turns into sometimes even better things. So here's a really good example of what happened to me. So I launched a new show. If everybody's not aware of it, I launched a new show called The New Trust Economy. It's on blockchain. I started it in January.
I was going to say, how long ago?
Yeah, January 20th, I think I started.
How many episodes have you published?
I think we're at like 15, 18, something like that, 15 or 18. But at the time, we were at about 10. The third episode was an interview I did with someone named Eric Tippett, who was referred to me by a PR publicist I know really well. We've had a relationship for quite a few years. And so I interviewed her client, and we had a really great interview. It went really well, and I aired it. It was my third episode that I aired. She was pitching him and got him on the Larry King Now show. And as a part of the research, because on TV, the producers do research and research their own questions. So the producers were doing the research, trying to figure out what questions to ask. She served up the video from that podcast, served that up to them, and they watched it and took some of my questions that I asked them, actually. But not only that, they reached out to me, and this is 30 days after I launched the show. I had less than 1,000 listeners because we hadn't even done any publicity or push out or launch.
I don't think even listeners. Less than
1,000 downloads, right? Right.
Of all
the shows,
episodes,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was really low because we hadn't even done social push yet. We were like a little behind. We launched it a little earlier than we expected. And so anyway, they reached out to me and with 24 hours notice said, we'd really like to have a woman on our panel. Would you come on the show and be via Skype in with Larry King? And I said, heck yes. It was Tom's birthday, and sorry, Tom, but we can't go to lunch because I got to be on Larry King. But that happens. And so there I was on Larry King. Now that has given me yet 2 more opportunities. I'm now going to speak on stage in New York City. I'm going to sit on a panel with Maria Bartiromo and be talking to 200 investing women in New York. So it's led to more things. So no, it doesn't. Your listenership doesn't always matter when you've got these relationships building and you've got them out there working for you, because these PR firms are remembering that you've added value to their clients and they want to give back. There's that law of reciprocity that kicks in there, and they want to give back and they want to help. But more importantly, it is their job not just to place their clients, but to publicize that placement. And so that is one of the most critical things that you can do is continue to serve that. Now, do it well. Don't just take anyone. Take people that serve your audience at the end of the day, or serve your core content. That's going to matter most. There's a couple other things. I have a PR tip sheet that we give out. Many of you may not have gotten it. Usually I give it out when I give speeches. I think we've given it out on previous client calls. I'm going to make sure to relink it here. It's a PDF. It has my straight PR tips on how to pitch the media. Things are very different in how you pitch media today. I write 2 columns now, one for Authority Magazine and one for Inc. Magazine. And how people pitch me matters. And what we have to remember is that we are in a world of non-professional journalists, right? It's not my day job to be a journalist. It is my day job to run this company. And so I write because it serves the business. It gets the business publicity. So remembering that and how you pitch matters. So there's a lot of tips in that. Happy to share that with you. It's all free. Like we've always given that away. There's a lot of really interesting things in there that you'll find useful, things that you didn't know, like you should pitch at the end of the month, because people are desperate for stories if they've got a column.
Well, they have quotas.
They have quotas. Right. If you give
them
them a pre-done article at the end of a month, they're, are practically wrapped up, they're going to do it.
I think we updated that PDF within the last month with some new information.
We did.
I believe. So even if you got it before, you might want to get it again. So how are we going to link that?
Well, we'll link that in the replay. So when the replay comes out, all the links will be there for you to get all of these documents.
We also should make sure that link was in our next newsletter.
Absolutely.
further
Yeah,
on.
we'll have
So
more in there.
do that.
Yep, so there's that. Now, if you'd like to write a column, if you'd like your podcast to lead you to have a column, let's have some conversations about that, because there is a very clear way at which you go about doing that. So this is something we can talk about. So if that interests you, let's have an offline conversation. And let's talk about a couple of other ways that you can start that process, though, and that's what I want to talk about, or what I call seed articles. So let's say you run your podcast and you're doing we've got your transcriptions covered, you got your full-length blog posts, you're doing all those good things. If you wanted to, and even if you don't know how to write, you can do this. You can take that transcript and you can write a 600 to 800 word summary. You could have a ghostwriter write that. We have some resources for you. If you're interested in that, ping us. We'll send you links to those resources. We typically use FreeUp. That's one of, and Nathan's one of our clients here. So
Nathan is a new one.
Nathan's new client.
Hasn't quite launched his podcast yet.
But he will be. So FreeUp, and it has 3 E's in the FreeUp, freeup.com. And FreeUp has many writers. You have to ask for the right kind. You want a feature article writer. That's what I would do. But you can give them the transcript and they can start from there and they can write a summary article. Now you can take those articles and pitch them out to publications, trade publications. Try Forbes to become a contributor there. They have a little more openness. Inc. is a bit harder to get into. Entrepreneur is even harder to get into. So like there's a couple of them that are harder, but you can pitch to them. You have to make sure that when you write it, though, that it's not about you, that it really has a feature and it has a give back. Listicles, bullet points, any kinds of those things play really well on Inc. Entrepreneur has their own style and Forbes has their own style. So be looking at what the publication likes and make sure you sort of format the style of the article like that, or ask the ghostwriter to format it like that. So, but that's a great way to start being a writer. So that's one of the ways that I really like. And you've already got you've got 90% of the work. So why not? I'm going to say the other things that you can do for publicity that you're forgetting about is that you have guests. You already have guests. You've got email follow-up and you've got ego bait. Did you check them?
Are you sure that they shared them?
Are you sure that you shared them?
Following up and making sure that your guest has shared them. That's why actually when we send our guest communication email for you on your behalf, if you're a customer that works with us to do your episode and blog production, we send them an email the day that the episode publishes, but then there's a follow-up email we send 1 week later. Sometimes they might have been busy that day, they didn't get the email, or they forgot, they were too whatever.
Very often I get an email back that says, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I forgot, I'm pushing it out now.
Right,
like, and so we found that second one is really good. But have you really followed up to see if they did that even after that? So we have an ego bait tracking system. I use it mostly for my Inc. column. I don't do it as much for our podcast because of the kind of guests we have. It doesn't really matter as much. And many of our guests are our partners. So they're always pushing us out. So I don't have to worry about it as much, but I do it for my Inc. articles and to make sure that people really do what they committed to and said they would do, and to check on these PR firms, because if they're not doing it, then I want to follow up and say, hey guys, I put your clients on here. Why aren't you publicizing this? So we check social and we check the website. And I have this ego bait tracking sheet. And so basically it has like the name of the person, their email address, because that's who it's going out to. It has the link to the show or to all the information. And then it has a date of when we've checked it. And we just simply write in there, we checked and they did it. So it's done. Great. They shared it on social and we did it that they checked and they did this. I also use this sheet in the future for me to check and see how we're sharing it on social. Like, have we shared it enough? Have we pushed it out enough? Is it going in our evergreen sort of role of things that we share out on social? So we periodically reshare too, and it pushes back out to them and reminds them to reshare as well. So that's one of the ways that we do that. So that's a good idea for you guys to do, because you know what? You had them on, you did all that work. Now check and make sure they really shared it. And believe me, when you push them a month later and say, hey, you didn't share it, they feel guilty, and they do. They push harder then. So that's always a great way to do that. I want to talk a little bit more about other social things that you can do. There are many different ways you can publicize your podcasts, publicize your episodes using multiple formats. We found that audiograms do really well, where you're creating like a small track player kind of thing, like a spiky, I don't know, it's a visual.
It's actually more like a square graphic that you can share out anywhere on social media that has a clip of the audio. And usually there's closed captions for what's being said and a waveform so that when people are looking at it in a social feed, it's a video technically, so they see things moving, and so that, oh, maybe I want to look at that. You know, it grabs their attention a little bit.
But they read the closed caption, and we find that that works really well as opposed to just the straight video, because the closed caption, many people have their phones set with the sound off.
This is something we've been testing and modeling. It's not currently a part of what we include in our episode production, but a lot of people have been asking about it. We always prove things out first on ourselves as the guinea pigs and make sure, you know, we could do it as a part of our system before we offer it to our customers. It's getting very close, and we're going to be offering that as an option to all our customers in the coming, you know, I would say month to two at most.
Yeah,
we're getting very close.
I want to remind you here, technically, that you have about 7 different ways you can share your episode, so that you're not sharing it the same way twice. So that should you want to do 7 days of shares for a single episode, you could do that. The audiogram is one. Obviously, the straight link to the show is another. There's a clip from the blog. So in other words, you might quote something that came out of the blog and just have it a straight written word post with no image. You have the header graphic. We have it in square, and you have it in rectangles. So you have 2 ways to share that as well. You have quotes. You could take quotes from it and create a graphic of just a quote that was said. You have your ego bait. So you've got that as well.
Well, and don't forget, in every blog post, you know, we highlight quotes with a plugin that, you know, site visitors can use to share your blog post about that episode. But the reality is you should be doing that too.
Right.
And a lot of our clients I know do that. When the blog publishes, they go in and click each one of them and schedule a post to go out, not all at once, but at, you know, different times throughout the week.
So you hit the click to tweet or the tweetable, I forget which one we're using, click to tweet. Yeah, click to tweet, and you hit the click to tweet, and then it tweets it.
But the same thing on Facebook, you know, or LinkedIn, taking the URL for the blog post and sharing that will populate the header graphic and then share the link back to your site blog post.
Right. And that's really a trick there, is that if you're going to be doing it yourself and you're not using a schedule software like Buffer or CoSchedule or any of those things, you go straight to your blog post and share from your own share links as if you were a customer, as if you were a viewer of your blog. And so share from there. And so that's just some of the easiest ways to do that. I would like to remind you that some of the top podcasters out there, and I've heard this from everyone, they pay to advertise their podcast. They pay to get listeners. They pay to circulate. So you are competing against paid traffic. So just keep that in mind, that the only way to outdo that is to make sure you do enough promo. Once is not enough. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of it. Emails. Don't forget your emails. Are you really sending it out to your email list? I mean, don't forget, not everyone is in their social feed all the time. Just because you happen to be like constantly on the alerts on your Facebook doesn't mean they are.
Yeah. Some people still prefer email. And that's the thing I find is you sort of have to be pushing out in all these different places to catch all the potential viewers, listeners that might be out there, because some people prefer to read, others prefer visual things, others prefer to listen, and people prefer different platforms. There's lots of things to consider.
Yeah. Press releases, we've been testing out some companies, and, I'm not a big fan. It's just not working out really well. There's no reason for you not to put out a press release if you've got an easy access to it on the fact that you launched a show, or whenever you've met a milestone, like, oh my gosh, I hit 100,000 downloads or something like that, or you have a great story to do. But it hasn't shown to do much traction in terms of driving listeners to you. That hasn't been shown to do much there, but it's out there and it's something to consider. And then I just want to talk briefly about follow-up episodes, like some ways at which you might do structure it so that people listen to more episodes, right? So that they're being tracked into listening to more. And what I mean by that is,
this is actually pretty brilliant. I remember you talked about this. This is what you and Dustin talked about.
This is what Dustin,
recently?
yeah, Dustin reminded me that, like,
Dustin
he was
Matthews,
asking for
that is.
advanced techniques. And so I love that Dustin pushes my thinking all the time. But there's a couple of things to think about. First off is that, you know, you've been doing your episodes and they're kind of old to you. Like, you forget that. But sometimes people don't realize they just join your show and it's new to them and they haven't really thought about some of the old episodes. So you got to remember to refer to those old episodes while you're in your show. So if you're talking about, you know, that you've got, that you've done a show on investing maybe, and you had these great investors on who had some great tips in your early episodes, make sure you've jotted down their names and remind people of those episodes. You don't even have to have the numbers of the episodes. You can just refer that we did an episode with so-and-so. They can go and Google it, or they can go in your search bar of your website and find them. So it'll be very clear for them. So make sure you do that. That's one of the things. But also, when you've hit over 100 episodes, and many of you are at that place, when you do that, you also need to remind people of those early episodes. So doing a where are they now episode kind of thing, where you maybe take and do 3 of your favorite clients from the 100 episodes. And this is a technique for maybe doing it as your 100th episode, right? Where you do a recap of, hey, you know, in the 6 months since we started the show, and like, here's 3 success stories from people we interviewed, and they're farther along than we ever imagined, or they've had this success and this growth. And you do a 3-part recap. And it throws back to the original episode and reminds people they're there. And it kind of creates a nice cap and end to your 100 episodes. And the reason why that is that at some point when you've done enough shows, iTunes won't list them all. When you get over 300, you hit 301, your first episode drops off the list.
Well,
So,
but when that happens, side note,
yes.
then start another feed with the, you know, you can call them the classics or
Volume
one,
Yeah.
whatever. You put up another show identity that has it. And as long as you're hosted on Poditize, you get up to 5 show identities with your monthly subscription anyway, so you may as well use them.
Yeah.
So there's a
you
way to
won't
make
lose
them
them.
available, but in the current feed, which has probably the most subscribers, this is a great point.
Right.
Tracy.
So you kind of capped your 100 episodes. So now it's like a whole volume of it. So you've capped it and you do it. So if you were to spin it off into its own thing, it's 100 episodes and it's perfectly bingeable. Like, that's something to think about as well. So now 101, think about it as your opportunity to have a new intro episode. And where you're introducing what your show is about, the great guests that you interviewed in the first 100, reminding them of them. So you just shout out names and topics and things like that. So it reminds them, so that if they haven't listened to it and they look at that as your new introductory episode, that they will go back and listen to your volume 1. Now you've got people subscribing in 2 feeds. You've got even more traffic.
Keep in mind, if you're not close to your 100th episode, you don't have to wait till 100 episodes to do something like this. Let's say you're doing 1 a week. Maybe you want to do it after episode 50. That's almost a year worth of content. Or if you're doing your show in terms of seasons, where you're doing 12 to 20 maybe as a season, and then you're going to do season 2. I mean, you could have a recap of season 1 that also does this,
Right.
where you're referring back to, it could be like Tracy suggested, 3 past episodes. It could be 6. I mean, it's really, there's no right or wrong answer here. I think it's a great way, though, to tie back into previous episodes and get more engagement on them, especially for newer listeners.
Right. So the last thing that I want to mention is Tom and I got to hear John Yusei, right? Did I say right? Yusei. Yeah, John.
The spelling is very unusual.
It's got a lot of vowels in it.
Literally, his last name has every vowel in it, including Y. S is the only non-vowel in his name. Very memorable, but a really sharp person.
So he used to work at YouTube, and now he's working for Instagram TV. And he gave me some fabulous tips at lunch. I got to sit next to him, and I got to pick his brain. And he said that some of the best things that you can do is use the Instagram TV option, not the story style where you only get like I don't know, 30 seconds or something like that. This is a longer tail program, and you can sign in and you can do these videos. And you don't need to do your entire show Instagram TV. You can if you want, but that's not the point of it. What he said is working really well is to do these like 5 or 10 minute kind of spots where maybe you're talking about this entire month's worth of episodes. So where you're really kind of giving this recap, you're in the energy of like, I've been using these tips and things that I've learned, and here's what I've done with it. And you're giving the highlights of those episodes. And then in the Instagram post itself, you're sending links to the different episodes.
This doesn't have to be, that type of thing where you're, teaching something to the audience. It could be, I'm thinking of a new podcast that's about to launch from Jason Bird, Bird Chronicles, which is great stories. You could actually, be recapping the highlights of some of the stories
like
of the
teasing
of either the past month, or if you've recorded ahead, which you probably have, and you know what's coming up in the next month, you could be teasing to what's upcoming
do
for
both
your next month, and then get more engagement on this episode. If Instagram is a platform that you choose to promote in.
Right, exactly. Well, and you can do the same thing. So LinkedIn has a 10-minute. So they have a 10-minute max on video. You record them, and
actually, they're opening that up.
They are opening it, but right now,
I think it may have already started.
Has it started? I didn't know that.
Where you can go live on LinkedIn. Right. So that is changing. It has been 10 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
So and this is the thing. This is why I'm suggesting Instagram and LinkedIn, is because it's new there. They push out anyone. So whereas like live stream is sort of tapered off in terms of them promoting anyone, they're still pushing it out more than it is standard video that you upload. Live streams are still pushed out more, but they're not as pushed out as they used to be. Yeah, they used to go to like everyone and and your friends, but now they don't anymore.
On these platforms where their application of live video is new, you'll definitely get more exposure by using it.
Exactly. So be sure to tag that you're a podcaster, #podcaster, #your show. In anything that you do in the Instagram post. And the reason why is because people like Gary Vee are hashtagging podcast. And so when you do that, you're helping yourself line up with him in terms of being searched on Instagram TV. He's one of the prominent users of it right now from podcasting, and he's killing it on there. He's got high top circulation.
But he's also engaged in a paid program to do it.
He
is he not, Tracy?
He's engaged in a paid program. So he's doing both, though. He's doing unpaid and paid.
But
so
you may as well, those are pretty big coattails to ride, or
that's
be
right.
associated with. So that's
right.
Good.
There's just one other thing that I want to mention, and that is I have Eric Christopher. Everyone calls him E-Rock. He's a great PR publicist out of Arizona, and he's got a new program that he's going to be launching. And it's free. It's publicity tips straight from a publicist. And so I've got secured for you guys all the preview. So you guys are all going to get in the first beta group that goes through it. So anyone who would like to, he's got some great ways to pitch people, find the right press. So this is going to do more of that press media, more of that written, that is always harder to get. And so he's going to talk a lot about that.
To me, that opportunity is better than just putting out a press release.
Everything he teaches is better than that.
How are we going to connect?
So it's going to come straight in the newsletter, email. There'll be all of that. So make sure you watch for that. And if for some reason you missed it or you haven't heard from it within the next 30 days, you reach back out to us and say, hey, I didn't see that. And we'll send it to you again.
We're going to put it certainly in the newsletter, and wherever we post this, we should put those links.
We'll add it in here. Yep, absolutely. Right. So open it up for questions.
Well, not quite.
You got something? You've got one more.
Things. I know this is longer than we usually talk before we open it up to questions, and thank you all for your patience. This is some really good information, I think. But two other things. The company I met at PodFest, which it's earlier this month, has another opportunity to get more exposure for your podcast. It's not a free option. That's why we left it till the end. It is a paid option, but it's relatively low cost. This company called Digital Audio Exchange is part of a network of podcasts, or has access, I think is a better way to put it, to networks of podcasts that are more closed systems of podcasts where there are a lot of listeners, but they have over 100 million impressions, meaning episodes and opportunities to be exposed in. Not that you have to use all of them, but they have a relatively inexpensive program, depending on the types of other shows, you might want to put an ad for your podcast on. And the reason why this would be relevant is this is on other podcasts. Okay. So, the people listening are already podcast listeners. So they have, they sell this anywhere from $2 CPM to $7 CPM, which is a pretty darn low rate range. CPM is cost per 1,000 downloads or listens. So let's say you wanted to expose yourself to 100,000, get exposure on 100,000 podcast plays on some of these networks in the right genre for your audience. And at $2 CPM, that would be $2 per 1,000, and then 100,000. So you're talking about $200 to expose yourself to 100,000 podcast listens at that $2 CPM rate. And if it was $7 CPM, 100, it'd be $700, which is, getting a little more expensive. But, you get to choose how many impressions do you want to get exposure to. So we actually think that's pretty reasonable. And Tracy and I were talking about testing that ourselves. Get a little more exposure for Feed Your Brand. Let's
see how it works and share that with you.
So we're going to do that. And then next month, or it depends on when we can schedule it. It might, if it's not in time for next month's client call, then we'll report it to you as the following month as soon as we experience that, what the benefit is.
That's something we should mention here, is that we're moving to a weekly call. The weekly calls will have different purposes because we're onboarding a lot of people. So there'll be a lot of setup people and 101 things, but you're always welcome to hop into one of those group calls. So the schedule is going to be posted as we head into April. We'll get that out to everybody. There will be a call a week where you'll either be able to touch base with Tom, me, Alexandra, and we'll rotate. And then Tom and I will still do the last Friday of every month together.
This call like we do every,
but it'll give you
adding more group calls every month. But yeah, some of it is going to be a little more, newbie type of stuff that some of you probably won't want to be a part of. Others of you who are relatively new to this group may want to participate in some of those.
Right. And the idea is that we're just hopping on and it's a Q&A call more than it is any kind of lesson like we're doing now, or kind of speech like we're doing.
Last thing before we get to open it up for any live questions. And we can go a little bit past 2 o'clock if any of you still have questions. We're not going to end this as long as there are questions. But relatively new feature in podcast RSS feeds, in particular, iTunes made this available. And iTunes, gave birth to the podcast industry. And generally, when they make a change to the capability of a podcast, the entire industry follows. This is relatively new. And I'm going to have to show you here on my camera with my phone, because it's something you can't access from a desktop. I'm showing you on an iPhone on my Apple Podcast app. You have access to your library of shows, and then, pick a show. Well, what I want to show you is, and I'm going to pick Ken Courtwright's show here. There's his episodes. Now, when you're in the app, if you hit details, which shows you then all the information for the episode, down toward the bottom, you're going to see, I have to scroll, sorry. You're going to see episode web page. This is in your podcast listing, your published podcast. So you're within the app. If I click that episode web page, it opens up a browser and is going to the blog post for this episode on Ken's site that we created. This is a part of our episode production. And so you get a link from your podcast episode to the blog post on your show. Now, it's important to understand right now, iOS and or iTunes related apps are the only ones that are making that available. The other platforms like Spotify and iHeart and Stitcher haven't started making that link available. I'm sure they will. And it's also something that if you're hosted on a platform other than Poditize for your show, you may not have the ability to put that in there. There's only one other platform I know of in the whole industry that has the ability for us on your behalf to put in the link to your blog post and publish it with the podcast. It's something we had to add to the code of our hosting, and we did, so that So that obviously your podcast listeners have easy access to the most recent blog post or the one that's actually related to that episode. So just know that any of you that are hosted on Podetize, we are automatically putting in that link in the listing for your published podcast into it. We're putting it in there, and whatever platforms are making it available, it's there. We're already doing it for you. It's just automatic. So that started this past month. It's very new. So it's a good thing for everybody. I'm really glad they did it. And in fact, what we found is the one other platform that is actually doing it, they're not, making it well known that you can do it. And if you're not aware of it, they're putting a link from your episode to their platform, and that's benefiting them more than you. So everything we do is in your best interest. So I'm excited to share that with you. It's just a new automatic feature. Okay, so that's it. We've talked way longer than we normally do. So if any of you have a question and you'd like to come on live to ask it, please just enter in the chat and let us know. And then we'll bring you on, ideally one at a time. And so, and if there are no questions, we'll wrap it up here pretty soon. But so let us know in the chat if you have any questions about either anything we were talking about today or anything else. There's no limits here to what you can ask. So I know there's a couple of relatively new people on this call. I don't know if you have any questions today.
And I did add those links into the chat. So
I
you guys
see
don't
that,
have to
yeah.
wait. While I had a few minutes, I was adding those in for you. So there's the link to the Authority Magazine Q&A. I strongly suggest you wait till you have something actionable, because you're going to be up there and featured against top podcasters. So make sure if you've got a great story, like something that you got from your podcast, that's the time to utilize this opportunity. There's the PR tips, or I call it media pitch secrets, actually, and that article is there.
Oh, please, Jason.
You are
You
not.
have nothing to apologize for. He
Jason
posted
says
that
to apologize that he's been a pain in the A*STAR.
No, it's a
Bird.
bird. He's not.
No, he
been.
hasn't.
Please,
Yeah.
Jason.
That's our job to be here.
It's our job to support you. We're very happy to have you on our platform, and we're very happy to.
And there are
support
no
you.
silly
I'm
questions.
very excited for your show to be launched. I think you're within like a week of being out there. I don't know what the timeline is, but anyway, I know you've been submitting a lot of episodes.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's see. As a newer member, what is the best tips for the first
For
PR
launching?
moves? Launch.
Are you in launch? Yeah, David, you're in launch.
Yeah. He's actually technically launched, but he's sort of relaunching with us and doing his new website. So he's still early on.
Still early on. So early on, it's important to start. I think the best way to do this is to sort of think of it like building your relationships, just like you're building in real estate, right? You're building your relationships with title companies and with those that might refer you. So thinking about it their way, that's the best way to start in the early stages. I've got a new show. I'd love to give you some publicity. Why don't you come on my show? Inviting the right guests, utilizing PR firms to be able to bring those guests on. That's going to serve you well long-term. And so that's, I think, the best way for you to get started. The other thing is really to go and guest. Go on other real estate shows, go on other investing shows, go on other places and just sort of experience, especially in your case, you want to go on ones where you're going to have millennials, because that's the focus, right?
Whether it's a real estate related show or not, honestly, any show that's got a large group of millennials listening is probably a good one for you to be a guest on. And actually it might work better because there's not going to be any overlap between what the host or the show is, trying to do and what you're trying to do. It would be complementary. So
yeah, and a great way to do that, David, is to go on and look at, let's say, you've looked through the episodes. So I mentioned that wedding show. I'll have to look up the name of them, but it's a really cool kind of show. They like dish about weddings, and but going on there and saying, hey, I saw that you had, someone who was on like this, and I can provide a different perspective. Millennials are are missing the boat by not buying into real estate. And here's the angle I think we could talk about. And so you're talking about something that's subject matter of interest. You're not pitching yourself. You're not pitching your services. You're talking about like their age group and their age demographic and what's going on in the marketplace there and what they're missing. They would love to have that exposure because that's an angle that would play really well for them. So that's the kind of thing, is listen to their show and make sure that you're going to be able to add value and how to add value. So when you pitch them, you're not just saying, hey, I'd like to be on your show. You're saying, hey, I'd like to be on your show. And here's what I think we can talk about that your listeners would find engaging.
The other thing I would do is ask other millennials, because I know that's your target market, millennials that what podcasts they listen to on a regular basis. Where are they going to, consume information? And that would, give you some direction as to where you might try to get on as a guest on those shows.
Yeah. And this is I don't know where you are in budget and other things like that, but if you're willing to do a little bit of a paid boost, especially when you're launching your show, it's a great idea in the early days because it's a little harder because you don't have as much history of guests and episodes to kind of have people come and listen and go, oh, this is a great show. Of course I want to come on. You could do it a little bit differently. You can offer to place ads on some of these other shows where maybe you won't make the best guest, but especially if they don't take ads at all yet, they'd love a few $100. Like, it's super cheap.
Well, you could do it directly on a show by show basis like that if you identify a good show that you think would be a good fit. But you also remember this other company I was talking about, this digital audio exchange that we're going to test. So I can't say to you, I can't vouch for how successful it would be yet because I haven't tested it, but it's a pretty inexpensive thing to try. That would be another option for you, which would push out to the target market you're looking for. So,
but placing an audio ad, that is one of the tips that 935 episode podcaster told me about, was that's what he did in the early days, and it grew his traffic tremendously. Of course, he does it every day a week. That's why he has so many shows, so he's got a lot of engaging content, but he really went out there and in the early days started placing ads on other shows and brought them over to his platform, and they stuck around. And so he has over 1 million downloads. So he's really doing really well.
That's a big
so that worked really well for him. And he said he used to just give like a few $100 a show and place it for 30 days and, move on, or for 4 episodes.
You'd be surprised how many podcasters would take low dollar amounts like that to put an ad on their show. I mean, if they're really not making any money on their show yet, haven't established a rate, something's better than nothing, and they would likely take it. So,
so that's one of the things.
Market for that.
How do you find shows in the right demographics? So that's a little harder. I think you have to really ask around, really ask other, listeners, ask your target audience. I would go to some of your clients already and say, hey, what shows do you listen to?
Well, not only that, use social media for this. You can post on different platforms, Facebook especially, Instagram, I think especially, and maybe some other social media platforms, and do a poll.
Yeah.
You could do a poll and say, hey, what are your favorite podcasts you're listening to on a regular basis? And, posted in the right kind of groups on Facebook that might have your target market of millennials. So that's one way I would do it. And the other, the direct way would be to go on some of the different platforms, iTunes, Spotify. Alexandra, what's your favorite podcast app that you listen with?
Well,
quickly.
Spotify and iHeartRadio.
Spotify and iHeart. Okay, here one millennial is telling us Spotify and iHeart.
We all pay for
So,
Spotify, so why wouldn't we want to listen to our podcast?
So then,
Google Play. I know.
Yeah, Google Play. I agree.
I'm the same way.
Tracy is too. I use Apple Podcasts app. But let's say I heard on Spotify, I would search on those platforms and type in some keyword phrases like, subjects that are related to millennials, and just that direct search route, and see what shows come up, read their descriptions, and, it'll be some educated guessing, honestly, at first, as to is this the right market? But I think that, between doing that and maybe cross-referencing some shows that you find with results of an online poll on social media. I like the idea of polling, quite honestly. And when we do webinars, live webinars, like public ones, not this coaching call, but when we do live ones, the Zoom has a feature where you can conduct a poll right here live. Like with all of you, we could have done that today, prepared some questions ahead of time, had them in here and ask questions and get poll results and see what the results are live. That's pretty cool. If you have an opportunity to be on any webinars that would be of the right audience, you could conduct a poll like that. But even if you can't, putting up a post that's a poll in social media, I think would get a lot of engagement. I mean, you'd be surprised how many people, when you ask a question, will answer it.
Yeah.
So that's something I would try.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep in mind that when you do a little bit of paid like that you only really have to do it once. You only have to do it like for a month, like 4 episodes or even a couple of episodes, because all you're doing is like trying to attract that listenership and have them come over to you. You don't need to do it for long term, because you're not long-term driving them to a sale of something. So you can just do a little once-time buy kind of thing and then move on and try a different one the next month. And so you could plan that out and do many different ones over multiple months, which should be sending traffic to you all times. If you are already running Facebook ads, try mixing up your ads. That was the next part of the suggestion, is try to mix up your ads with ones where you're really not advertising your services, you're advertising the show as a resource. So just try that as an option, because you've already got a demographic dialed in with the Facebook ads, so you should already be working in the right place. Yeah. So, but don't do it if you don't already have a dialed in audience, right? So you don't already have your lookalike audience, you don't have all of that right, because you'll spend a lot of money trying to get that, and for only the return of listeners, it's not worth it.
And you know what I bet for David, what a really good sort of a lead gen type of a advertisement to put out there for your show might be to ask a question that is a common question millennials might ask themselves, which is, how much money does it really take to buy a house in Orange County? And you know what, on Facebook, you can focus that ad to only be reaching people in Orange County, California, if that's, where you are. So, I mean, what are those common questions? Ask that question, and that will, even in text as the visual ad, and that may capture them and cause them to come and listen.
Yeah, one of the other, actually, I should have mentioned this when we were talking about the different types of posts that we do. One of the other ones, when you don't use just a quote in Facebook or Instagram or other things like that, you're not doing a straight quote, but you do a fact and fiction. Those do really well for us doing fact and fiction.
Neat.
So
like
yeah, we've been doing that, or myth busting. So you'd probably have a lot of myth busting statistics about that. So that might work really well for you to promo an episode and see how that is. And then if you get it, you can push that out as an advertisement later.
Certainly eye-opening questions, right? Or, which one of these statements is true? Which one of these questions is actually the right question to be asking? I mean, my mind is starting to
we have a couple
of
people I don't recognize what their shows names are. Jules and Rolanda.
Well,
what are their shows?
Rolanda has a interview series with celebrities, I believe.
Oh, wonderful.
And I think I know Jules, and I'm trying to remember her show. But
Jules, type it in for me.
No, it's for.
What's Jules' show?
Well, no, I think she may not be the host, right? If I remember right. But anyway, I have to look it up. I apologize.
We do have a couple hundred shows here.
Many people every day.
So yeah.
That I and I don't remember it right now, I'm afraid. But,
well, yeah, if you want to let us know, Jules, I'd love to check out your show. So one of the things that I try to do is listen to everybody's show over time, but I have to tell you, I'm like really behind because we have so many now. I try to at least listen to a couple of them.
Motivational celebrities business. That's
perfect.
Rolanda. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Wonderful.
And Rolanda, I have to check. I don't know if you got your website redone.
Jules,
RE Investor Summit. There, Mitch. Mitch is the host. He's our
That's
new
right.
Mitch. We have a few Mitches. That's also what's making
also the confusion.
A little confusion.
So I'm sorry if you guys are hearing the squeaking. We have a puppy in the office. That's
our office pup.
Yeah.
No,
No.
it's not a problem, Jason. Jason's asking a really good question. And by the way, if any of you, the intent part of this is if you want to come out and ask it live, we'll turn on your video and your mic and you're welcome
Just raise
to.
your hand,
But
whatever.
if you'd rather not, that's fine too. Jason doesn't care if a bunch of people listen to this podcast. And no, big traffic does not define success for everybody.
Yeah.
That it's absolutely A-okay. We have several podcasters that we work with that they don't care one bit about the number of downloads. That is not their primary goal in what they do. That is perfectly okay.
Yeah. The dirty secret of the podcast industry is that the average podcast has less than
or gets less than 100 plays per episode. Honestly, even with our show, Feed Your Brand, while it is supporting this business, and I'd love it if a lot of people listen to it, it wasn't our primary goal to get a certain number of listens per episode. In fact, out of all of our podcasts, it may be our least volume of listens per episode, I think.
Well, New Trust Economy is brand new, so it's lower right now.
Well, maybe that one is. But our point for that podcast is to support our community, like all of you, but also people that aren't customers yet, share everything that we know about how to get the most out of podcasting for whatever your purpose or intent is. And where we share all that information freely, and it's just to be helpful. And then those people that are the right fit for us to be a client, they'll come to us, right? So the number of people listening on that one isn't necessarily the point. We have other podcasters that use their show as a VIP guest strategy, where they are trying to build rapport with their guests and actually lead generate from their guests for clients. And it works very well for the few people we know that do that. And I know that's also not what you're doing, Jason. I know you have a different purpose with telling these stories from your experience over your years in the legal profession. I'm dying to be actually a listener of your show after our conversations about what you were going to do. So I will be one of your early listeners, but it's honestly, every different podcaster has their own unique goals and reason for why they're doing it. And they are all perfectly legitimate. So please don't feel like somehow you're in the wrong place or using the wrong medium, or, is there something wrong with you because you don't care about how many downloads? Absolutely not. Everybody has their own purpose. They're all legitimate. And as long as the show is providing you value and or your purpose is providing value to whoever you're intending to provide value, wonderful.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, there's
don't
so many different ways.
Don't compare yourself to everybody else.
Right. And if you're coming into podcasting with the mindset of, I'm going to take sponsors, then you have to get your listenership up. And it's the only thing that's going to matter at the end of the day.
Or if you're going to use it in any way for lead generation for your business, which a lot of people are doing, and I know that's not you in this case of your podcast, but the volume doesn't always matter, but the quality of listener. I would much rather you have 500 raving fans who love your content and are waiting for your next episode than to have 10,000 per episode of casual listeners. So there's the value proposition for you and the listener. I want to give you another example. I just had a call yesterday with a woman who is retired. She's in, I believe, her late 70s, who is, I'm not going to tell her name yet or exactly the name of what her show is going to be, but she's had this extraordinary life, lived in 7 different countries. She started from nothing, was homeless as a child, but has had this extraordinary life since then. And, she's dined with Barack Obama. She's dined with the president of Ireland and met the president of Pakistan way back and was invited to Pakistan. Anyway, but is just, otherwise you would think, she also was an actress. She's actually got an IMDb listing at one point, not really her whole career or her whole life, but anyway, had this extraordinary life. She is going to start a podcast just to tell stories from her life. And you know what her primary reason is? To document it for her grandchildren. and I was like, well, why do you want to put it out there as a podcast? If it's really, you could record audios and save them for your grandkids to listen to. Well, she actually thinks that her story would also be of interest to other people. And actually, after hearing a bit of her story, I wholeheartedly agree.
I think it'd make a great book.
Tremendously engaging podcast and
Book.
will become a book, which we talk about as well. So she's going to do it, but it's a complete passion project for her. If there's a lot of listeners who also get some entertainment or value out of it, that's just bonus for her, but it's not her goal.
Yeah.
So she's going to start a podcast. I'm really excited to support her in doing that. And it's like the least business oriented show I've probably encountered yet. And there are a few. I mean,
so one of the other things I want to mention is that some of you have been getting celebrity guests and needed studio spaces. If that's the case, if that's yours, so like I have an opportunity I already interviewed her at an event, but I have an opportunity to re-interview Molly Bloom. And if you haven't seen Molly's game or read the book, she's amazing and she was so engaging. And I'm really looking forward to sitting down with her for a longer period of time. But she's the kind of person who like expects to be in a studio. So I've been establishing relationships with studios around the Southern California area. I've just got a new studio I just got off the phone with in Utah and Salt Lake City area. And so we're starting to establish relationships with studios across the country that are offering that, so that should you need to have a studio, you're going to be able to find one. And so keep that in mind, that sometimes that can also help you get a really big guest, and get them in, which can boost your show. So sometimes having to do that live is really important. We've got a few NFL players or retired players and things, and they know they won't get the guys to come on if they're not sorry,
pup.
This is our distraction in the office.
This is mental health right here.
That's right.
This is Lucy.
So the studios are available. So if you guys have a need for that, ping me and I'll make sure to get you in touch with the studios. They're going to give special rates to our clients and things like that, especially introductory rates. So let me know if you guys have any, just even one-time drop-in needs for that. That can help too. So any other questions? Anyone else have anything that we can help you with? And Lucy's going to start barking on the mic.
Hold on. Jason has a question. Is an office in a conference room dedicated to the new podcast? Oh, if anybody is in Texas, it's in Houston area. He has a stocked bar. Oh, I'm there, dude.
I love it. That's a late night guesting.
Tequila.
There you go. Awesome. Well, that's so nice, Jason. Thank you for that. We'll make sure to let people know if they're in your area. I'll ping you.
We may be there in late July, right?
Late July,
Texas. Yeah. We'll let you know if we're gonna. Yeah. I'm hoping we can get to Houston. We're gonna need to though at some point.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Wonderful. Well, if no one else has any other questions, it's been a little over an hour, so we'll probably wrap it up. But if there are any more questions, please feel free.
Yep.
We're keeping an eye on the chat here in case anything pops up. So let's see. Just reminder for those of you who may be watching the recording to check the links in this post.
Yeah, because you won't be seeing those chat links.
You won't see those links in the chat. So anything Tracy mentioned.
Rolanda put her Rolanda on demand. I love that.
RolandaOnDemand.com.
Perfect.
Awesome. I'm actually going to go to that. Check out if it's
wonderful.
It went to. It redirected me to your iTunes listing, Rhonda. I don't know if that was intentional. Rolanda, sorry, I said that wrong. But I see you're publishing stuff recently, so that's really good news. I'm glad to see that. All right. Well, hey, thank you, everybody. I guess that'll be a wrap for the end of March. Yeah, it does go to iTunes, which is fine.
Yeah. One other thing is that we are tagging you when we post your posts. We post out and feed your brand on social media everywhere. Yeah. Make sure you friended us, like either Tom or I or both of us, Alexandra. Make sure you friended us and liked the Feed Your Brand page on on Facebook. And I think if you like it on LinkedIn, even though we have one, it allows us to tag you there as well. So make sure you're doing that. Make sure you've tagged Feed Your Brand everywhere that you can, because that's how we can tag you, because sometimes we can't tag you.
We'll share your stuff and push it out. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we do try to share you guys periodically and share your shows. We've got a lot of shows in the queue, but we try to share at least one a day from clients.
Or
so
when we write a feature article on any of you,
definitely share
if
it.
you've had that interview with Laura Hazard, and if you haven't, you will. So those of you that haven't launched wouldn't have done that yet. But after you launch, you'll get an invitation from Laura Hazard to have a feature article written about you. And we put those out all over the place. And we definitely want to be tagging you, linking to you. So yeah, make sure you're connected with us, if not. All right. I guess that'll be a wrap. Thank you all so much. And like you'll, watch the newsletter and invitations to some of the now starting more weekly webinars we're going to do if you're interested in any of those, especially if you're a newer podcaster. And then, obviously next month we'll be back to do this same thing again. Thank you, Lucy, for the.
Thank you, Lucy, for squeaking the end.
I sure can hear it. Squeaking her toy. Anyway, thanks, guys. See you next time.
Take care.